The other night, I went to the theater expecting to have a few really good laughs. Two of the funniest men on either side of the Atlantic are starring in a show called Good Evening on Broadway. And I got more than I bargained for. I was in a sweat with laughter by the middle of the first act. They're genuinely hilarious. They are the stars of the review on Broadway of their own called Good Evening. And I have prevailed on them to do a bit for us tonight. It is one that's just in their repertoire. It's not in the show. Will you welcome Mr. Peter Cooke, who is the less short of the two, and Mr. Dudley Moore, right here.
Roger? Roger, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Sounded very much like you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, it is you.
Yes.
Come along and sit down, would you?
Well, sir, I've just come back from school, sir, and I'm feeling a bit grubby. We've just been playing rugby, so I think I ought to have a bath.
Oh, never mind about that, Roger. I'd just like you to come and sit down for a moment and have a bit of a chat.
Yes, sir.
Have a cup of tea. Would you like a cup of tea?
Oh, thank you very much indeed, sir.
That is a cup of tea, if you want one.
Thank you so much, sir. Sure.
Roger, your mother and I, you know your mother, don't you?
Yes, sir.
She's that woman who lives in the house.
Yes, sir.
With us. Your mother and I were having a bit of a chat the other night.
Yes.
A bit of a chat. And we came to the conclusion, after that chat, that it might be a good idea if I had a bit of a chat with you.
Yes, sir. Yes. What about?
Well, Roger, to be perfectly frank, how old are you?
Well, I'm almost 18, sir.
You're almost 18. That's a very good answer. You're very good at maths, aren't you?
Not too bad, sir. Yes.
Excellent. Well, you're almost 18, Roger.
On the verge.
On the verge of it. And it occurred to me that when I was on the...
Verge.
On the verge, yes, of 18, that I first became interested in members of what can only be described as the opposite thing. SEX.
The opposite number?
The opposite number, yes, precisely, Roger. And I thought it might be a good idea to have a bit of a chat with you about, very frankly and very openly, about how you came to be brought about.
Well, I'd be very grateful, sir, because, you know, a lot of the boys at school say very filthy things, sir.
Yes, well, I know this happens at school, Roger, and this is why I thought it would be a good opportunity to have a bit of a chat openly and frankly between father and son about how you came to be about.
Yes, sir.
Well, Roger, to be very frank,
sir,
in order for you to be brought about, it was necessary for your mother and I to do something. And to be more specific, and I think I ought to be more specific, it was necessary for your mother... Don't snigger, lad. This is a very serious subject.
That's right. It's my cold, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes. It was necessary for your mother to sit on a chair. Which she did very well.
Yes, sir?
She had to sit on a chair recently vacated by myself, which was still warm from my body. She sat on the chair with a great deal of care, correctly, and sure enough, 4 years later, you arrived. And I hope this makes things absolutely clear to you. There's nothing filthy or dirty about it. It's a perfectly natural act, and You needn't hold it against your mother that she did this thing. It's absolutely normal.
Well, I'm so grateful, sir, that you've told me. It's relieved me a great deal. But one thing does alarm me immediately, sir. I was sitting in this very chair last night, sir.
Yes?
And I got up out of it, and it was still warm, presumably, from my body.
Yes?
And Tibby, the cat, came and sat on the chair, sir. And I wonder if we ought not to have it destroyed.
Oh, it's a lovely chair, Roger.
No, sir.
It'd be a pity to destroy that.
No, I meant the cat, sir. I mean, she might be...
No, Roger. This wonderful, marvelous thing can only happen to two people who are married.
Ah.
And you're not married, are you?
Well, no, sir.
Or not to the cat, in any case. Oh, Roger, I hope this has cleared up things for you, and...
Oh, yes.
That you'll take no notice of these smutty yarns you may hear at school from your school friends, or for that matter, Uncle Bertie.
Yes, dirty Uncle Bertie, they call him at school, sir.
Dirty Uncle Bertie, and they call him rightly.
Yes, sir.
Your Uncle Bertie is a very, very sick man, Roger.
Yes.
We should all feel very sorry for him. You know, if it wasn't for your mother, my wife, the same person, if it wasn't for your mother, I don't know what we'd have done. Do you know, your mother is the only person who can really cope with Uncle Bertie?
Really, sir?
Do you know she actually has to sleep in the same bed as Uncle Bertie every night to make sure he doesn't get up to anything?
Awful.
She's a wonderful woman, Roger. You should be very proud of her.
Well, I am, sir. And, well, I just wondered, actually, this is the sort of time she might like a cup of tea. Shall I take one up to her now, sir?
Roger, I don't think that's a very good idea. Judging by the noise from upstairs, I think your mother is busy coping with Uncle Bertie.
Poor mother.
Poor Uncle Bertie.
Now a message from Sony. We'll be right back. Hello, fellows.
Hello there, Harry.
Good evening.
Shirt looked very familiar that you... Oh, very nice of you to plug the show that way.
No, I always do that.
Say, that's something I remembered somewhere in the back of my head you had done somewhere.
Well, we remembered it in the back of our heads, I think, tonight, because we did it once on television, I think, in the United Kingdom, in about 1966 or 65, yeah.
It had a new feel to it, though, with your shirt on. It was very nice.
That was my shirt.
It was.
We're approximately the same size, exception of you, who was much smaller than I am. Right. Your show is so funny. I really wasn't... The only criticism I would have is that I sweated from laughter so much that I think I lost about 12 pounds that night. And that was a Monday, which is a... Is Monday dreary night for you in the theater?
It's a good night, actually.
Very good night,
They were
yeah.
roaring there, and actors always complain about Monday. I don't know why.
I think we do a 9 o'clock curtain on Saturday, which is, in fact, slightly harder because people have eaten beforehand, so the laughter comes a little more heavily, you know.
Yes.
They're also eating during, which is the problem, I think.
Really? You get
A lot
people
of
to bring
munching,
salamis.
a lot of munching
and...
goes on, yes.
I've played in clubs where the people eat, and it's appalling.
I don't know how you ever play in clubs. That
Yeah.
really frightens me. I like the safety of a stage and that sort of slight formality, you know.
Yeah, the clubs thing is bad. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, especially when they eat and have their back to you, and you're up there talking, and then someone begins to choke on lobster.
I think the only thing
It's a lot of fun.
I did a cabaret in Manchester when I very first started. I followed wrestling and striptease. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was the worst experience of my life.
They wrestled and had striptease in the club?
Yeah, and then I came on as a comedian. You know. It was terrible.
The wrestling and striptease were separate
Well,
things.
not always. No.
Sometimes they lapsed into it.
Very liberated country, yes.
I guess you are. Do people send you nasty mail in England the way they do in this country?
No, I think that you get a little more over here, actually. People
Yeah.
are more inclined to write here.
They do waste a lot of stamps.
Yeah,
on time.
it's enjoyable stuff, though.
Yeah.
Frightfully interesting.
I think it's interesting. I was going to ask you, last time you were here and I forgot, do you have to comb the show for words where a laugh would be killed by the fact that a word isn't familiar to the American audience, like underground for subway, or...
We use
or
underground, in fact, now.
A state
but
wagon for station wagon, or...
we did change, we do have the word underground in the show. We did change it to subway, but it felt wrong. And in fact, people do understand what one means by underground eventually.
Yeah.
There's only one word we had to change, which was
You use
in the
word-
English show we used the word rubber,
Uh-huh.
and in the American show we used the word eraser. for natural reasons.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it'd be a very complicated visual picture.
I do understand.
Yeah.
I'm only 18, you know. Going on 18
Then
anyway.
anybody sit on this seat afterwards?
That is hilarious. I have a feeling there probably were, and possibly still are, Victorian fathers in England who think that's about what it is.
I have a feeling my mother still feels that's the way it is.
You know, that's either that or the babies are found under cabbage leaves, which was always a favorite in the Midwest. Why cabbage, I don't know.
Isn't that true?
Well, only
What else-
very
what
rare
else
that
goes
they're...
on? Not disgusting things, is it?
Oh, yes.
Not to do with those awful things we have about our persons. I trust none of that comes into it, does it?
No, none of
I've
that.
never
Those
been
are-
involved in this sort of rubbish myself, you know. Don't go along with it. The world is overpopulated, but I believe the cabbage leaf. No, my father, seriously.
Is that your father you're talking like now?
Not really.
No.
My father quite seriously took me for a walk when I was about 13 years old,
Yeah.
and trout fishing. And for some reason, trout fishing seemed the ideal occasion to introduce the subject of sex. And he went about in a very roundabout way, and he said, you may have heard certain stories, but I think I ought to clear everything up from the start. And I'll be perfectly frank, but in order for you to be born, it was necessary for your mother and I to share the same bed. He left it at that.
I used to feel when I was a kid, you know, that because we came from a working class family, I thought it was an extension of our poverty, that my mother and father shared the same bed. I, in fact, wrote an essay when I was at school saying that it's such a shame Mummy and Daddy have to share the same bed. In fact, neither my mother nor my father told me anything about all those rude things that go on.
And you were in college at the time, which is the...
Well, I was 53 at the time, yes.
You're amazingly well preserved. There isn't a trace of the facelifts that you've had over the years. How old are you, Dudley? Are you my age?
38.
38?
Mm.
Really?
Am I your age?
I would have thought you were more my age. We have a message from our locals, and we'll be right back.